Have you ever noticed that you're always the one starting conversations? You send the first text, you make the plans, you keep the friendship alive. And sometimes you wonder, would they even notice if I stopped? If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. And there's actually fascinating psychology behind why some people are always the initiators while others wait to be contacted. Today we're diving into what science says about this pattern, what it reveals about your personality, and most importantly, what you should actually do about it. Let's start with the science. There's this concept in psychology called attachment theory. It basically says that the way we bonded with our caregivers as children shapes how we connect with people as adults. People who always text first often have what psychologists call an anxious attachment style. If this is you, you tend to seek reassurance in your relationships. You're the initiator because waiting feels uncomfortable, maybe even like rejection. Here's what's happening. When you don't hear from someone, your brain interprets silence as a potential threat to the relationship. So you text first to ease that anxiety. It's not weakness, it's actually your brain trying to protect you from losing connections that matter to you. But here's the interesting part. People who rarely text first often have what's called an avoidant attachment style. They value independence and can actually feel overwhelmed by too much contact. So the dynamic isn't necessarily about who cares more. It's about different emotional needs playing out in the same relationship. Beyond attachment, your personality plays a huge role. Psychologists talk about something called social initiative. Basically, how proactive you are in social situations. If you're naturally extroverted, you're more likely to initiate contact. Extroverts get energy from social interaction, so reaching out first feels natural and even rewarding to them. There's also the trait of agreeableness. If you're high in agreeableness, you're deeply attuned to maintaining harmony and connection. You might text first because you're sensitive to how the relationship feels. You notice when things seem off, and you instinctively want to fix it. And then there's conscientiousness. If you're organized and responsible, you might see yourself as the relationship manager. You keep track of birthdays, you check in, you make sure no one falls through the cracks. It's not desperation. It's your natural sense of responsibility showing up in your friendships. Now, here's where it gets psychologically complex. Many people who always text first are caught in what I call the fear of rejection paradox. You text first because you're afraid of being forgotten or rejected. But by always initiating, you never actually get proof that the other person values you. You're essentially preventing the very reassurance you're looking for. Psychologists who study self-compassion point out something crucial. When we constantly seek external validation through initiating contact, we're outsourcing our self-worth. We're essentially saying, I only matter if they respond. There's also what's known as the reciprocity principle in relationships. When relationships feel one-sided, resentment builds up. Not because the other person is necessarily doing anything wrong, but because the imbalance creates real psychological distress. Research suggests that perceived inequality in relationships can actually trigger stress responses in our brains. So what does it actually mean if you're always the one texting first? Let's separate facts from fears. What it doesn't necessarily mean. They don't care about you. You're annoying them. The friendship is one-sided. You need to stop reaching out entirely. What it might mean. You have different communication styles and needs. They're less anxious about connection and assume everything's fine. They're terrible at keeping in touch with everyone, not just you. You're more socially proactive by nature. The relationship might genuinely be imbalanced and needs addressing. Here's a key insight. People who rarely initiate often assume that you already know they care. In their mind, showing up when invited or responding warmly is their way of maintaining the friendship. They're not playing games. They genuinely operate differently than you do. Psychologists who study social networks have found that everyone has a limited capacity for maintaining relationships. Some people maintain fewer, deeper connections by being highly proactive. Others maintain broader networks by being more reactive. Neither approach is wrong. Okay, so now the practical part. What should you do if you're tired of always texting first? 1. The pullback experiment. Try what I call the conscious pullback. Stop initiating for 2 to 3 weeks and see what happens. This isn't a test or manipulation. It's data collection. You're simply finding out, does this person reach out when I don't? Some will, some won't. Both answers give you valuable information about the relationship's true nature. 2. Direct communication, the mature option. Say something like, "Hey, I've noticed I'm usually the one reaching out, and I want to make sure you actually enjoy hearing from me. Do you prefer I initiate, or would you like to reach out more too?" This is vulnerable, but it's authentic, and it gives the other person a chance to explain their perspective. 3. Adjust your expectations. If someone consistently doesn't initiate but responds warmly and shows up when it matters, accept that this is their pattern. Stop interpreting it as rejection. As psychologists say, not everyone loves the same way you do. 4. Focus on reciprocity, not initiation. Instead of counting who texts first, look at the overall reciprocity. Do they invest in other ways? Do they remember important things? Do they show up when you need them? Sometimes people who don't initiate are incredibly present in other ways. 5. Build your self-worth internally. Work on what psychologists call secure attachment. Practice telling yourself, "I am worthy of connection whether or not someone texts me first." Your value doesn't depend on someone else's communication frequency. Here's the bottom line. Always being the one to text first doesn't make you desperate, annoying, or too much. It often means you're socially attuned, proactive, and care deeply about your relationships. But it also means you need to make sure you're not carrying relationships that don't nourish you. Pay attention to the overall reciprocity. Communicate when things feel off. And remember, the right people won't make you question whether you matter to them. And if you're watching this thinking, "Wait, I'm the person who never texts first," maybe this is your sign to reach out to someone today. Sometimes the people who seem the most socially confident are the ones who most need to hear from you. Thanks for watching. If this resonated with you, let me know in the comments. Are you the initiator or the responder? And hey, maybe text that friend you've been thinking about. They might need it more than you know.